We've gone to visit my wife Sarah's family every summer since we got married 4 years ago. They live in a small town way up in the mountains. Her parents own a lot of land, so we would spend our time riding ATVs and hiking trails. Here's a picture that I took of their house a while back, so that you can see the kind of place. A while back, I took a week off work and we drove up to spend the time with Sarah's parents and siblings. It was a good time and the week passed way too quick. Sunday rolled around and we loaded up our crappy old sedan for the drive home. We left her parents' place in the late afternoon and had started winding our way down the mountain towards the highway when Sarah sighed. "Great, check it out." She handed me her phone. It showed that the highway was red with traffic for something like 25 miles on the highway. That must have been an accident. I guess we'll be sitting in traffic for a while, Sarah said. I pulled to the side of the road and pulled on my own phone. I saw that there was a long, winding road that cut through the mountains for nearly 50 miles, finally rejoining the highway after the traffic had ended. I figured that going slow on an old windy road was better than sitting in stop-and-go traffic for 5 hours. Sarah was very against the decision. When I asked her why, she just told me that she had a bad feeling about it. But still, somehow I convinced her that we would be fine. So instead of turning right and heading down towards the highway, we turned left and headed deeper into the mountains. The road turned to dirt pretty quick. Sarah jumped into the back seat so that she could stretch out, and she recorded some of what we saw out the window. I was shocked at how deserted it was. We only passed one house over the entire hour and not a single car. Sarah recorded some video of the drive, which you can see here. We'd been on the road for a little over an hour and we came across a hill. Up ahead, there was a single crashed car just off of the road. I pulled off to the side of the road and got out to take a closer look. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but I realized that I had no signal, not even roaming. I took a picture which I'll link below. I came around to the driver's side of the car and saw that the driver's window was shattered with no sign of the driver anywhere. Sarah walked to the front of the car and put her hand on the hood. The engine's cold. That means that it's been at least a couple of hours since the crash, right? Are we the first ones on this road to drive by? She asked. I told her that I didn't know, but that it could be with how few people we had seen. Sarah pointed to the broken glass from the window. It seems like a lot of this glass is inside the car. If the driver busted it to get out, wouldn't it make sense that it would be out on the ground beside the car? She said. She was right. The inside of the car was littered with the safety glass from the window. I looked closer, and I saw flecks of blood covering some surfaces too. Where is the driver, though? I didn't like that, and I told Sarah that it was time to go, and that we would call somebody once we had a cell signal. She agreed, and we hopped back in my car. I turned the key in the ignition and heard the rapid clicking noise that meant my battery was dead. I popped my hood and saw that there was a bunch of corrosion built up on the battery terminal. I swore under my breath. "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. I told her it meant that there wasn't a good connection between the battery and the motor, and that the battery was probably dead. We could fix the corrosion, but we would need a jump to get the car started again. I talked the problem over with Sarah. We were already dozens of miles from her parents' place and we had no signal. Based on the car wreck, it was likely that we wouldn't see any more traffic for hours at best, and days at the worst. And on top of all that, the sun was starting to get low in the sky. We needed to find someone with jumper cables. I remembered that we had passed a house a few miles back in the road. I figured it would be best if Sarah stayed with our car on the side of the road, so I started walking back up the road by myself. It took me a little more than an hour of walking before I saw the house again. The house had a strange architecture, with part of the top floor hanging over the lower floor. I saw that there was a small garage in the woods behind the house. I took a picture, which you can see here. I walked up to the door and knocked, calling out as I did. There was no answer. I walked to a window next to the door and looked through. The inside was abandoned, but I saw that there was a message scrawled on the wall. I looked closer and could just barely make out the words. It said, "They can't see you if you don't make noise." I read it over and over. They can't see you if you don't make noise. What did they mean? I checked my phone again, but still I didn't have any signal. I yelled out for help, but I heard nothing. Judging by the state of the place, I figured that it must have been abandoned. And on top of everything else, the sky was starting to get dark. I made my way towards the garage behind the house and I kicked in a door. The inside was in fairly good condition still. There was an old cabinet against the wall. I opened it up and saw some rusted jumper cables and a flashlight sitting on a shelf. I figured the battery in the crashed car might still have enough charge to jump my car, and so I grabbed both of them. At this point, it was completely dark outside. I started walking back toward my car, and I was happy to see that the flashlight still worked. I was alternating between walking fast and running. Something about that house and the message had given me a bad feeling, and I was eager to get back. I was walking alongside the road when I heard a scuffling sound from behind me in the woods. I stopped and I looked back for a long moment, and that's when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my flashlight forwards and saw a creature standing behind a tree. It moved its head in erratic motion, constantly twitching. It looked like a gigantic spider with a human head. Its eyes reflected the light of my flashlight like headlights. I heard more motion in the woods behind it. I locked my muscles in place and I gripped my phone hard and accidentally pulled the volume button, which I had set to take a picture on my phone's camera. My phone made the clicking camera noise. At the sound, the creature snapped its head in my direction, and it began moving around the tree. I pulled back my arm and threw my flashlight as hard as I could behind me on the road. The creature looked back behind me, and with its spindle legs, it started walking towards the flashlight. I noted that it moved pretty slow. The moments that it took to walk by me were an eternity. When I saw that it was a dozen yards away, I started running down the road and I didn't look back. Here's the picture that I took. After an eternity, I reached my car completely out of breath and full of adrenaline. Sarah opened her door and got out. "Did you find any help?" she asked. I yelled for her to stay in the car and I ran up to the crashed car. I reached my hand into the broken window and popped its hood, and then ran around and pulled its battery out. I attached the cables that I had brought to both batteries and Sarah turned over our car's engine. I ripped the cables off of our battery and slammed the hood shut, and then jumped into the driver's seat and sped down the road. Once we made it home, I told Sarah about all that had happened. She started bawling, and she told me that she had heard stories while growing up about the valley that we had been in, and that it was the reason she was hesitant earlier. She never imagined that there was anything to them. I don't know what to think now. If I find anything else out, I'll make sure to update you guys here.